We're going to jump into the last topic I wanted to go over today, and it kind of ties together a couple of the things that we're talking about. Is obviously COVID-19. In the last week, we have accelerated wave 1.5 has been going on for about a month now, but we're really accelerating where it's gotten national attention. You're seeing the infection rate spike up to, I think we're now at about 50,000 a day. So the question has come, do we close again? And the turbulence that I want to talk from a business standpoint is about the system structure of this discussion between the COVID-19 infections and the closing and reopening discussion, and how we use structured systems thinking to understand that turbulence and then make better decisions. Well, we can't always decide for the political or the government side, but better decisions for our business. So wanted to go over that real quick. And this is a diagram that came out from JP Morgan, and it looked at opening and reclosing as a function of this oscillating wave pattern. So on the left here, to clear the chart, net infections, these are the total number of infections. And then on the bottom is time. And so what you see, this oscillating pattern is a series of waves. You hear about wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, or I'll say wave 1.5. That's what these peak and troughs are. Wave 1 would be up to the peak and down to the bottom, wave 2, wave 3. And what they're calling out here, and this was originally released in April, and I did an infomullet on it, but I wanted to do something here with structured systems thinking. They're pointing out that different reactions, there's going to be multiple waves to this, and they may be over time until a vaccine's developed, we will be living in a multi-wave world. So that's what this diagram is trying to show, and I wanted to explain it. When you get into advanced systems thinking, right, those of you who have seen me do my loop diagrams and things like that, sometimes you don't even need to build those. You can simply look at a behavior pattern like this, and with the theories of systems thinking, understand the structure this is representing. So this is a little bit advanced, but it shows you how you could use structured systems thinking to understand something like this and derive meaningful business decisions. So in systems thinking, we call this an oscillating pattern. You know, it's the wave pattern, and we call it an attenuating oscillation. That means that the wave at the earlier points are smaller, or excuse me, are larger than the wave at the end points. It's shrinking. The size of the waves are shrinking over time. If it was increasing, we'd call that an exploding oscillation. And in structured systems thinking, we know that to have any oscillation takes what's called a second order negative feedback loop. And again, I'm not going to diagram it out. It's a type of feedback loop that we teach people how to use, but simply knowing that you need at least one negative feedback loop, second order. Negative feedback loops have goals, and the goal is what the feedback effect is trying to meet or max or reach, is a equilibrium to that goal. Well, we also know from structured systems thinking that if you have an oscillation that shrinks in size or increases in size, that can't be produced by one negative feedback loop alone. There's got to be two negative feedback loops, and they have to be interacting. Now, if a negative feedback loop has a goal that it's trying to reach, an equilibrium it's trying to reach, when we look at this for COVID, opening and reopening, we can kind of begin to say, what are those negative feedback loops? Well, there's one that's pretty obvious in that the infection itself, the pandemic itself, is a negative feedback loop seeking a goal level, which is a equilibrium of a percentage of population that's kind of its maximum infection rate. So you can think about these rises in the wave as being that first negative feedback loop of the pandemic itself, seeking a goal of as many people as we can sustainably infect. Not that the virus is actually thinking this, of course, because it's non-sentient, but we can pretend that if the virus could think, it's kind of saying, I want to infect as many people as I can at the maximum of my R-OT value, and based on the dynamics of this, it'll be a certain level of the population. So it's rising the infections. That other second negative feedback loop also has a goal, and its goal, at least in this case, is to flatten the curve. It's the policy goal of, we don't want to have a whole bunch of uncontrolled infections because that will swamp our hospitals. And so, and that equilibrium, it's not zero, but it's a low enough infections that it's beneath this curve level that we know for hospital capacity. These two negative feedback loops interacting together produce this pattern. And the way that this works, you can kind of think of it as infections rise, the emphasis of closing down, putting stricter social distancing, all the elements that we've done in pandemic responses increases until the point that we have a lockdown order, stay-at-home order, very strict social distancing or masks, and then that begins declining the infection rate until we relax. And that's what these red circles are. It's a decision to relax the policy decision of staying closed or staying with distancing or things like that. And these two negative feedback loops are constantly interacting. And the way you can think about who's going to win that interaction is the relative speed at which those loops reach their goal. So the pandemic has an infection rate of a fairly high rate of speed. It takes a few days. It can double within a week or 2 weeks. It's got a high speed to its point of increasing infections, and it's a relatively fixed speed. It's going to, those parameters aren't going to change much. But policymaking, you can think of policymaking as slow or fast decision making, either slow to close or fast to close, and slow to open or fast to open. And that is probably and specifically here I want to talk about reopenings. That is probably the key variable that's driving this behavior, is how fast or slow are decisions made to reopen once we have already closed down. And again, I talked about this back in April and made a kind of a forecast here that's come true. And this was informed by structured systems thinking. We know in structured systems thinking, it's the relative speed of those two negative feedback loops to their goals that will determine this behavior. And this seems really fancy and scientific and math and confusing, but think of it like you're standing in a shower, one of those old showers that you turn the knob to the left to get it hot, and it's not getting hot, so you turn it more, and then it's scalding, and so you turn it all the way to the right to get it really cold, and then it's freezing. Well, what's happening is there's a time delay between when you make a choice to turn the knob and the pipes say, okay, we need hot water. And that time delay, if you keep turning that knob fast because you're not happy with the result, that you're constantly sending a signal, more heat, more heat, more heat, and then it comes out really hot. Well, then you turn it to the right, and it takes a time delay to get that cold water in place. And because you're not waiting long enough, you just keep turning it to the right and you overshoot. So this concept of overshoot and undershoot is the sort of the simple way to think of a shower of what's happening with these opening decisions, right? And what it means is, practically speaking, the faster we make a decision to reopen under the belief that we are safe, the more likely we are to have an additional wave. Just as if we didn't wait for the water to get up a little hot, we just kept turning it fast. We're not waiting very long. If you wait a while in a shower, and ideally you're not standing in it, you can feel that temperature adjust and go, okay, that was the right level. I don't need to turn anymore. You just turn it once, you wait and see, and then you adjust again. But if you're insistent on fast turns, you're going to overshoot and undershoot. Same thing with the reopenings. As we reopened quickly, the decision making to reopen was far too fast, and we didn't have the full information of what was actually going on. We reopened too quickly, and now we're experiencing this wave effect. In fact, we didn't even go down to a full trough. We were sort of midway, which is why I call it wave 0.15. But to this effect, it's the same thing. We were fast to reopen, and now we're dealing with the consequences of it. And you can think of this is obviously a government choice, whether the state's open or not, that's a government choice. But you can think of this in your business as well. In a situation like this, where you're dealing with an oscillatory pattern, the pandemic is one side and your business decision is that other, what goal are you seeking to achieve, and how fast is your decision making relative to seeking that goal? How fast are you going to turn that handle to try and get the water where you want it to be? And the faster you turn that handle, the more rapid your decision making, the more likely you're going to overshoot or undershoot the actual place you want to be. So kind of the guidance I'm giving a lot of clients is, as much as you can, right? Depending on the nature of the problem you have, as much as you can, be slow on your decisions that are sort of exposing yourself back up into the virus. Be quick on decisions that protect you from the virus, but slow that expose. And that means, I've been advising clients since March. Be quick to close, slow to open. You can talk about schools. Be quick to move that work from home, but slow to shift it back. And this is a easy way to think about it, quick to do something that protects you from the virus, slow to undo that thing, which at least at the business level or the organization level may protect you to some extent from these oscillations. Of course, there's limits to what you can do because you're existing in a pond with everyone else and they're all making decisions as well. But when it comes to your own business decision making, your family decision making, your school or church or whatever, you can use this kind of system structure to guide you. And of course, this is a simplification. The reality is those two negative loops could be attached to many more loops that spread out in a large complex thing. I've just simplified the interacting point, but you can use this understanding to guide your business decisions of how fast are we going to make a decision relative to our choice between safety for COVID-19 and other business priorities we have. Doing that. So let's check for questions. Mike Lyons, I work at a residential, commercial, and industrial electrical shop. There have been a lot of changes we've had to adapt to. However, many of our customers and their safety has limited us staying busy as we normally are this time of year. Now we have to adapt to schedules and less number of workers on various jobs, right? And that's a different kind of, so there's and Mike, that's a great point. I describe the two negative feedback loops as one being your COVID-19 pandemic and the other being a safety response. But you may also think of it as like the changes of our customers as one negative loop. They have a goal that they're seeking their goal. That's one negative loop. And your goal is to keep employees employed and keep productive, but also not go bankrupt. So again, you have two negative feedback loops, and the decision making, the relative strength of the speed in each of those loops to achieve its goal, the interaction of that tells you a lot about whether you should be making fast decisions or slow decisions. And it can guide you in like, people were asking me, do I let workers go quickly or do I let them go slowly? Well, it matters based on how your client base is reacting. That's going to determine it. You can't do these decisions in isolation. You have to understand how both negative feedback loops are working. So appreciate your time today. If you have any questions on structured systems thinking, have a problem you'd like our help on, or want to know more about developing your own capabilities in systems thinking, please reach out at the email below. We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in what we do and want to follow our journey, I've added our LinkedIn and Twitter information. And we plan to regularly update this channel with quick tips and case studies to help you get the most out of your systems thinking and lean efforts. If you want to be notified whenever we add new video content, please consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the red subscribe button below this video.